In this video I'm going to show you how to make your first fan edit. I'll take you through the process from ripping the DVD to making your first cut. And remember, you can do all this for free. If you watched the previous video, you'll know that all you need is DVD shrink to rip the footage and hit film or one of the other free editing programs to edit the footage. And again, if you want to do 5.1 audio, you will need Audacity with the FFmpeg plugin. So let's take you through the process from ripping the footage to getting it into your editing software to making your first cut. So when you first open DVD Shrink, this is what you will see. Click on Open Disk. That will then show you the disk that's in the drive, and click OK. Now you can see the contents of the disk on the left hand side, and you would now click Reauthor. Now you can see the contents of the disk. Here is the film that we want to edit, so you would click on that and drag it over to the left hand window. So let's assume that you don't want all of this file, you only want a bit of it. This is the preview window, and this is the advantage of DVD Shrink because it allows you to scrub through the footage to find the bit that you want. So now that you've got a rough idea of where the bit you want is on the DVD, you would click here to set the in and out points. In this window, you would set the in and out points, your start and end frames, using the sliders. Word of advice: set them to just before and just after the bit that you want, and then click OK. You can see now that the clip has appeared in the left hand window. It's also in the preview window, so click back up and that will let you set the folder that you want to extract the file to. So you've ripped the footage from the DVD, that's done. We'll leave extracting the 5.1 audio for the moment. We'll come back to that later because we want to keep it simple. So the next thing you would do is actually edit your footage. So open your editing program of choice, import your file and drag it to the timeline. So you've got your footage on the timeline, and the first thing that you would do is you would trim off the bits at either end that you don't want. Remember how I told you when you set the in and out points to do it just before and just after the bit that you want? Well, you would trim those bits off first, because if you set the in and out points on the beginning of the bit that you want, chances are it will cut it off. So it's much safer to set it just before and just after, because if it cuts off the beginning of the scene because you've set it a bit too tight, you're only going to have to go back and do it again. So it's always safest to set the in and out points to just before and just after. Then you can trim those bits out before you start editing proper. So you've trimmed off the ends. In this example, let's say that this is the last frame of the bit that you want at 6 seconds and 13 frames, and this is the first frame of the bit that you don't at 6 seconds and 14 frames. Similarly, this is the last frame of the bit that you don't want at 40 seconds and 15 frames, and this is the first frame of the bit that you do want at 40 seconds and 16 frames. Now, it's not always the case that you cut at the beginning of the bit that you don't want and cut again at the end of the bit that you don't want, because sometimes what happens is, depending on what the audio is in those two scenes, you can get a glitch. So the safest way to do it is like this. What you do is you unlink the video and the audio track so you can edit them individually. Now, you don't cut on the first frame of the bit you don't want. You find the end of the bit that you do want and you go back one frame. The reason for doing this is that sometimes during the rendering you can get a one frame flash frame of the next scene, even though it's the one that you've cut. So I've found through experience that the easiest way to avoid that is to go back one frame into the scene that you do want and cut there instead. Then you cut the audio just before the dialogue starts in the bit that you don't want. This is what's known as an L cut, because the audio carries on after the video finishes. You then do the same thing at the other end of the bit that you don't want. So when you get to the start of the scene that you do want, you go in one frame and make your video cut there, but you cut the audio where the dialogue ends in the bit that you don't want. This is what's known as a J-cut, because the audio starts before the video does. So now you've got two clips that you're ready to join together, but before you do, don't forget to link the video and the audio clip back together again before you shunt them along the timeline. If you forget to do this, there is the chance that they will go out of sync, and that can be a problem if you make another 25-30 cuts before you notice it. So always link the clips back together before you move them along the timeline and join them to the first clip. And then when you do that, you will have a nice smooth audio transition from one clip to the other. The basic principle is always to think in terms of three scenes, A, B and C. A is the scene you want to keep, B is the scene you want to delete, and C is the scene you want to keep. So scene A, at the end of that is where you make your into cut, because that's where you cut into the bit that you don't want. B is the bit that you don't want, and C is where you make your out cut, where you're cutting out of the bit that you don't want. And the way to do that, if you're going from scene A into scene B, make an L cut, and if you're going from scene B to scene C, make a J cut. And that's essentially it. Yes, it can be more involved, there can be a lot more to it, but those are the basics. That's how you fan edit. So you've ripped the DVD, you've put the footage into your editing software and you've edited it. The last thing to do is to export the file and check it. So once you've made all your cuts, export everything as a brand new file, and then bring that file back into your editing software and check every single cut point. Do not delete your source footage until you've checked the exported file, particularly if you're planning on uploading it to the likes of fanedit.org. Okay, so lastly we need to talk about 5.1 audio. Remember, if you're going to extract the 5.1 audio from your DVD, you'll need Audacity and the FFmpeg plugin. So when you open Audacity, you would go to File, Import and Audio. If you have the FFmpeg plugin, you will see the option for the 5.1 sound. If you don't, all you'll see is the stereo mix. So import that file, and when you do, you will see this. So this is the problem with extracting 5.1 audio from clips as opposed to the complete file. All of this is silence at the start of the audio track. The actual audio from the video clip doesn't start until here. So these clips are not going to be in sync with the video when you bring them into your timeline. You're going to have to sync them manually. That's a complete pain in the arse, so don't do it. If you want to do 5.1, rip the entire file. But if you're happy to sync them manually, then what you would do is you would click this down arrow here and you would select Make Stereo Track. You would do this for tracks 1 and 2 and tracks 5 and 6. And when you do that, you will see that whereas before they were two individual files, they are now one combined file. So you will have a combined file 1 and 2, file 3, file 4, and a combined 5 and 6. So to export these files, you would click File, Export, and Export Multiple. If you only want an individual track, or if you only want a couple of tracks mixed together, then you would select MP3 or WAV. But if you want 1 and 2, 3, 4, and 5 and 6, select Export Multiple. So in this video, we've shown you how to fan edit. We've gone through ripping the footage with DVD shrink. We've gone over extracting the 5.1 from the entire file, not clips. We've shown you how to make L and J cuts to edit your footage, and we've gone over the importance of checking your exported file before you delete any of your source files or upload it to share with the world. And now you know how to fan edit.